What is the Simpler Meetings project for?
It's trying to answer the question, how can we reduce the burden of administration that's landing on a small number of friends? How can we do things differently to release time for spiritual matters, for witnessing the world, for outreach, for building community, and generally having a bit of a life? I think that people around the society have been recognising that we do have some problems, but also that there are many solutions that are being used already or that are being tried. And part of my project's role is to find some of those and to share them with other people. We know that some of Quakers' ways of doing things are very simple, and others of them are not so simple. The main focus of the project is at area meeting level, particularly thinking about area meeting clerks and treasurers and trustees, because those are some of the areas where the pressure is the greatest. And if that layer of the organisation structure were to crumble, then we face a much bigger problem as a society. But as I've talked with Quakers up and down the country, I found that actually quite a lot of the solutions and the innovations that might work at an area meeting level are also very transferable to local meetings as well.
Can you sum up the situation in a nutshell?
The burden of administration is laying on the shoulders of a small number of Quakers, often in their 70s and 80s, and at the same time there's another group of Quakers who find difficulty with connecting with the ways in which we do some things, and so they tend to stand back. And that means that the system is at times creaking and sometimes may snap. And that if we continue in the ways that we do at the moment, things are more likely to get worse.
Is there any hope?
Yes, there's lots of hope. There are lots of different ways that we can do things that are already being done in different ways around the country. And quite a lot of us are involved in thinking through how that can be done well. One of the great strengths of the Society of Friends is that over the centuries we've been good at questioning things, and our ability is strong in finding new ways and new light, and that's something that we need to do in this situation because we are a different people from how we were several centuries ago.
How are we different now?
Well, if you think only of maybe one generation ago or two generations ago, a lot more of us are the only Quaker in our families. Many of us are older than we used to be. People are joining as adults, and particularly in older adulthood. So perhaps they don't come with the depth of understanding and the familiarity that we used to assume. As a group, we are smaller than we were. Over the last 10 years, the number of members and attenders has fallen by 14% in that 10-year period. So we are definitely smaller than we were. And around us, society is now more secular and it's much more regulated than it has been. Lives are much busier, we have new technologies. A lot more women are in the paid workforce than a couple of generations ago, and people are retiring later and so are less available. And when they do retire, they may find that as grandparents there are more expectations around childcare than perhaps, again, a couple of generations ago. So we need to think about new ways in which we do things to liberate us from some of the burdens of some of the administrative ways in which we operate and release the joy of being a Quaker.
How have you found it talking with Quakers around the country?
It's been absolutely fascinating. There is a huge variety, I've been discovering, of ways in which we operate in terms of our geography or the size of an area meeting or local meetings, our meeting houses, the age of the meeting house or the location, or whether there's a meeting house at all. There are also now new expressions of Quakerism, people whose Quakerism is more about informal connections, things to do with gatherings or online connections or special interest groups, rather than only the local meeting being the only way they relate to Quakerism. There's also great variety in the way that area meetings are organised. I've been a Quaker most of my life and in 4 different areas, and I had no idea that you could hold area meetings on a Saturday. It just hadn't been in my experience. Always on a Sunday or perhaps on a Tuesday. And I say that because I keep finding that there are Quakers who are very sure that this is the right way to do things, and it's the way it's always been done in this setting, and it's the way it should be done. And yet, in the next area along, or the next meeting along, people are also sure that this is the way to do things, and it's the way it's always been done, and yet it's not the same as the others. So there's a paradox there, I think. And somebody helpfully a few weeks ago put it to me that it's not that there is one Quaker way, but that there are many Quaker principles. And that's what we should focus on. So it's not about finding one-size-fits-all solutions, but perhaps multiple possibilities, and creating a menu which people can look at their own circumstances and choose from the menu as you would do in a restaurant.
So are we allowed to do things differently?
Indeed, there is a lot more permission around than you might have thought, certainly more than I thought when I started. In Quaker Faith and Practice, we have a lot of permission to find the right way for our circumstances. The lists of things that are there are very rarely saying, you must do this in this way. It's more about how might you consider covering these things. And when I've sat down with the people who are, I suppose, the guardian of the church governance, so Paul Parker as a recording clerk and Michael Booth as governance advisor, and I'm going to them, is it really possible to do this? Can the people do it like that? How come this is being done in this way? Their repeated response to me has been, go back to the principles. Is this in line with our general way of approaching things rather than the specific fine detail? We also have the opportunity in the revision of the Book of Discipline to newly afresh record the way in which, the variety of ways in which things are being done.